Hello and welcome to the Personal Development School YouTube channel. My name is Thais Gibson, and on this channel, I make a variety of different videos about the subconscious mind, about relationship dynamics, and particularly attachment theory. So, you obviously stopped by here today because you had the question for yourself, why is my partner so cold? Well, in this video, I'm going to help you understand what might be going on at a deeper level. And we will talk about something called dismissive avoidant attachment style, how this attachment style forms, how it impacts relationships, and also what might be going on inside the mind of your partner who could be very cold or even standoffish. At the end of this video, we will also talk about, if you're already familiar with attachment theory and the different attachment styles, just some other reasons that somebody may be acting so cold all of a sudden in a relationship and other potential deeper roots of this. So, for anyone who is new to attachment styles, this is actually one of the most searched questions that then leads them to avoidant attachment. Now, if you didn't already know, there are four major attachment styles, and at a very high level, I will tell you a little bit about each one. Number one, we have a secure attachment style. They tend to operate very well in relationships because healthy relationship dynamics were modeled to them as children. Then we have three insecure attachment styles. We have our anxious preoccupied, our dismissive avoidant, and our fearful avoidant. And our anxious preoccupied attachment styles are often the ones who can sometimes exhibit needy or clingy behaviors in relationships, primarily because they have this deep rooted fear of abandonment due to a lot of inconsistency that sort of presented them with a lot of perceived abandonment growing up as children. Then we have our dismissive avoidants, who are the most avoidant attachment style. And they often are a little bit cold and a little bit standoffish. And we're going to really dive deep into that in a moment. And then we have our fearful avoidant attachment style, who tends to be the one in a relationship it's really hot and cold. They can kind of shift either way. And part of it is because they have, received competing messaging about what it means to love and what it means to attach to somebody because of kind of chaotic experiences in their childhood. So they may feel like love is good and it's safe, but love can also be scary and confusing and difficult. And so they can be, when they're feeling good about love and attachment, they can be showing up really warm and really connecting. And when they're afraid or those sort of different fears or triggers come up, they can really pull away. And if you're not sure of what your attachment style is, just by hearing about them at a high level, I will leave a link down below to a free attachment style quiz that comes with a really in-depth free report as well that will just explain to you not just your attachment style, but all the different attachment styles if you're interested. Now, we're going to cover specifically the dismissive avoidant in this video because this is the person who most often gets placed as cold. Now, part of the reason for this is because dismissive avoidant attachment styles essentially come about in childhood because there's a lot of neglect. In fact, almost every dismissive avoidant attachment style, we could argue, experiences some form of childhood emotional neglect. A lot of times it's under the radar. And what I mean by this is, yes, we can have this very overt neglect where literally food's not on the table, parents are always missing, nobody's there at all. But the vast majority of the time, it's under the radar emotional neglect. There may be a sense of stability and structure in the home where there's activities and food's on the table and dinner's at a certain time, but there may be an absolute invalidation or really just neglecting of the child's emotions. So, for example, if a child comes home from school and is visibly sad, the parent may just ignore it or have this sort of avoidance behavior towards it. If a child does cry, they may even get actively shamed for crying, or they may be told that children should be seen and not heard, or there's no room for that. Crying is weak, don't be a baby. They may get these like pieces of messaging where it basically reinforces to them over time, my emotions are bad, and thus I have to repress them. I shouldn't feel them. And so as a result of that, this dynamic of a child who's actually wired for attunement, wired for this emotional connection, it's something that we're biologically, literally seeking when we come out of the womb. It's essentially, if you think of a child being born into a world that makes no sense because you don't understand it yet, one of the only ways you actually feel safe in the world is through knowing that this caregiver that you're basically helpless to is paying attention to you, is connecting to you, is supporting you. And they show this. Children pick up on this messaging through being attuned to. And if there's a lack of attunement, and then that's also coupled with a lack of being able to talk about emotions, express emotions, or even being shamed for having them going throughout childhood, then you'll see this adult when they grow up reject this aspect of themselves. They'll think, okay, this part of me is not okay. I have to just really disconnect from this part of myself. And the more we are absent from our own emotional experience, the less we have to give to somebody else. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? If somebody has no money in their bank account, how can they lend you any money? And so, what we'll often see is dismissive avoidants tend to be really strong in their ability to intellectually connect with others. But when it comes to their ability to be attuned, to be present, and to emotionally connect to other people, it's something where they essentially have a little bit of stuckness, right? It's sometimes referred to, and we have other videos on this channel talking about arrested development, how we can kind of get stuck because we're not evolving in that area, because we're not getting the nurturing support or tools to be able to do so. So sometimes when you meet a dismissive avoidant, they may be a little bit cold or standoffish. They may really prefer to talk about intellectual connection rather than really having much of a capacity to talk about feelings or personal things. And we may see in relationship dynamics, part of their coping mechanism or set of coping mechanisms really is when they feel afraid or they feel too attached and they feel too vulnerable to somebody, they want to minimize those feelings because they're trying to minimize even feeling their own feelings. And so they may stonewall, shut somebody down, be cold, be standoffish, pull away all of a sudden. And it can be really confusing for somebody on the other end. But I also think it's really relevant to recognize that that's also representing this pain that this individual is going through, right? This inability to feel safe bonding and connecting in the emotional pillar of relationships or relating. And so it can make it quite difficult for that reason. Another really important dynamic to recognize in here is that when somebody is struggling with this ability to emotionally connect, they generally just have a whole lot less bandwidth, right? So not only do they go through childhood emotional neglect, but as adults, they become the neglector of their own emotions. They are literally neglecting themselves. And they struggle with something called co-regulation, which you can think of in a very simplified way as the ability to be yourself and express yourself around others, even in those sort of more vulnerable forms of yourself, and to receive needs from others, to talk about what you need, if you need a hug or need support, or, and to be able to receive that from other people. And these are all things that dismissive avoidants weren't really taught growing up and didn't really have access to. So if you see that your partner is quite cold, I think that it may be quite likely that they are dismissive avoidant attachment style. And this is where we're talking about this person being cold, as a general overarching theme, that sort of being how they show up in a more pervasive manner. But of course, there can be other reasons that somebody is cold. And in that case, we're kind of looking at the one off dynamics, right? People can be cold suddenly out of the blue because number one, they have an unresolved emotional experience that they're not discussing and they don't know how to, right? That can be, most attachment styles. That can be our fearful avoidance, as well as our dismissive avoidance. It can even be APs or securely attached individuals. If you don't remember and you're new to this topic, which attachment style you are, remember you can always go back and take that free attachment style quiz I have down below to find out what your attachment style is as well. And you can sort of take it on behalf of somebody to see what your partner or loved one might be. But you'll see that we can have an inability to talk through something that we're upset about, which can cause somebody to become cold or standoffish, which is going to be a great place to practice, improving communication skills. We can also see that somebody may be cold because of stress or different personal issues at the workplace that they may struggle to be vulnerable about. And there can just be other external factors, right? Financial stress, family stress, sort of life system stress. And I really want to stress the importance of being able to communicate about these things with your partner. If you see that somebody is cold or standoffish or stonewalling, don't be afraid to call it out, but just call it out in a gentle and respectful manner. So say something to somebody like, "Hey, I can see that you're pulled away a little bit, and I want to make sure you're okay. I would love to know what's going on for you." And if we can call it out, but call it out in a way where we're accepting of them and we're kind and we're just trying to better communicate about it and understand. Even our dismissive avoidant attachment styles tend to respond quite well to that. So fostering more communication, if you ever see somebody emotionally withdrawing, will be very helpful. And it's also very useful if you're on the receiving end of somebody suddenly turning cold. And you may find yourself personalizing it, thinking, did I do something wrong? Is it my fault? The more we can just foster transparency and open communication and context, the better these things tend to go. And the more we learn about each other and the more resolution we have. So, if you want to dive deeper into learning about attachment styles, you can take a 14-day free trial that we have active just for a limited time so that you can actually access all of our different attachment style courses for free for that 14 days. And you can understand more about what your attachment style might be if you take that quiz. Or you can understand about your loved one's attachment style by taking one of the courses in there, or a course for your own attachment style, of course. And that will just help shed some light on all these different things because I find it to actually be the number one impactor on all of our different romantic relationships. So hopefully this is helpful for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and for watching. Please let me know any other questions you have down below. Put a thumbs up if you want to see more content like this that's just more baseline learning about attachment styles in sort of a simple way. And thank you so much for watching.